Hi, we're building iHeart's SMT today. Here's an image of the photo that you'll get. It shows the placement of the components. Note that there's a green, a red and black resistors. They're marked on the resistor strips. Okay, so here we are. We're starting with our PCB. We're putting it so that we're going to tape it down. We're putting it down so that the point is either to our left or right. We're going to be soldering either from the left or right. So the video is rotated slightly. All right, so what we do with our soldering iron is that from the right, if we're right-handed, we've got a soldering iron in the right hand and left-handed soldering handle in the left hand, and we're tinning just one pad on the soldering iron side. So on the side of the hand that you're holding the soldering iron, you're tinning just the one pad. There I run out of solder, pull some more, and tin the last one. Quick check, and so now we've got all the passive components, and we've got the side of the soldering iron tinned. All right. Now we've got our capacitors. Peel back the little film with the tweezers, and we need two components here. These will be broken up into strips for you guys, so tip them out. Now you watch this. I've got the wrong tweezers here, and if you look really closely, you'll see how tiny these things are because I'm just about to solder it when bing, it's gone. And I can't find it again. So I'm actually using the wrong tweezers. You need a flat bladed tweezer. These have got round tips and they're a bit damaged, so that's a bit difficult. It's a bit more difficult. In the next part of the clip I change. So what I'm doing here is I'm just tacking them down, right? I'm using the solder that I've tinned to tack down just the one end of the component, right? So I'm getting another one. Pick it up with my tweezers. So I've got my tweezers in my left hand and my soldering hand in my right hand, and I'm soldering on the soldering iron side of the component. And this is not an electrical connection. This is just tacking the component in place, right? You'll see as I go along, I shuffle them a little bit to make sure that they're fairly well balanced on the pad. Okay, so I'm happy with these ones now. So I come round to the other side, solder the other side. That's a permanent connection. And then I'll go back to the tack side, which is not a good quality connection, and touch it up with a tiny bit of solder. I'm using really fine solder here so that I don't get tons of solder. Now here we go. I adjusted the camera so the focus is a little better for you. That didn't hurt your eyes too much. Now here I'm using the black strip resistors, so this is R1 and R2. I've got two of them out. Okay, and I'm gonna place them. So I've changed tweezers. Now these tweezers are much easier to use. They're a flat blade. Again, tweezers in the left hand. I'm right-handed, soldering out of the right hand, and see what I do there is I push down on the component. So once I've put it in place, and I'll do the same with the next one here. If you can hear a little click when it's in the right place. So what I do is I heat the end up. Now a bit of shuffling going on with this one. It's not always easy to get them in the right place. In fact, I think I come round to solder the other side of that one and I'm not happy with it, and I straighten it again. Don't be too particular about being straight, but you do need enough pad. No, I'm happy with that one. That's good enough. You do need enough pad showing out both sides that you can get a good solder joint. So there again, I go back and I touch up the connection that I was using to hold the component in place. So two stages. First stage is to tack it in place, solder the other side, and then come back and then redo the connection. Now here, this is a bit confusing. Make sure you follow the photo, not the video here. I'm putting the red component in the green component spot by mistake in the video, and the lights don't flash quite as well as they should. So follow the photo, don't follow the video when it comes to placement, but the video is trying to show you how to solder them. So once again, soldering hand in the right hand, tweezers in the left, pushing down on the component and then touching the solder, and it just goes click and sits really flat on both ends, right? So now I'm getting the last resistor. This is R4, which I'm going to touch up this. I touch up the other side of that one. You can do it in whatever order you want to. It doesn't really matter what order you want to do them. So again, I permanently solder the side that hasn't been touched yet, and then I come back and I do the side that I used to tack it down with. So here we go, putting the green component in the wrong spot. So R4, again, peel back the film and tip the component as close as you can to where you're going to install it. So just tip it onto the PCB. I'm working here under the camera, so it's a little bit awkward, so I'm a little bit clumsy. In fact, at some point or other, I bump the camera, so don't get too dizzy. Get ready for me to bump the camera, because it's a little shocking when I do. All right, so coming in, again, tacking it in place with my right hand, tweezers in my left hand, getting back and forth, happy with the position, not quite. I think this is the one that I go, oh, I'm about to do it, and I go, oh, I don't think I really like that. I mean, again, it's aesthetic. Electrically, there's plenty of pad there, but I'm just going, everyone's looking at this. The other thing that you can do if you're really pedantic is you can get the writing on all the resistors around the same way. And I think I did that on this one. It doesn't really matter. There I go, whack on the camera. All right, so then I'm going to come in with my solder again. I'm using really fine solder here so that I don't get too much solder, because it's much easier to add more solder than it is to remove it, right? I'm making sure that I heat the pad and the component at the same time. So now we've got all the passives done, and we're going to have a go at the LEDs. Now the LEDs are polarized, so there's a certain way around they have to go. If you look on the back here, I'm trying to show you an image of the back of it. It has a little T on it. And then I've given you on the corner of the photo a diagram of where the T goes. Now the line is the anode, and on the PCB the dot is the anode. So if you look for the I, essentially you want to have the line. I'm adjusting the camera a little bit there for you so you can get a better look at that. But that's the way around that you want the LED to go, right? You want the line up top by the dot, which would be, in my case, on the right hand side. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over. Same as on the other component, get the position right. Now these are 0805s, so they're fairly small, but they're not tiny, so they're actually quite usable. It's not that difficult to do this. Again, just get the position right, be absolutely sure, because by the time you've got solder on the other side, it's a lot more difficult. It is impossible. The best way to do it is 2 soldering irons if you need to remove a component, like a 2-leaded component. It's not impossible, but often when you remove a component like that, it's too hard to clean it up and use it again. You'll have to discard it. We don't have many spares, so just be careful. Be happy before you touch the other end. And there we go. Going back to the first end to make sure I haven't got a dry joint there and make it all nice. All right. And onwards and onwards. We've got one more LED to go, and then all the small components are done. Again, the LED's important to go around the right way. Look for the green T on the back. Turn it over. Get it ready to go. Hold it in place. So yeah, just be careful you don't turn it around, because the LEDs, you're not going to blow up a LED by having it backwards. So if it doesn't work, we just get to take it off and turn it around. Focus is a bit dodgy over this side of the PCB. Sorry about that. Okay, so tack down. Again, you can push down on it. I'm pretty obviously happy with these components, so I don't worry about it too much. But again, you can touch it with the soldering iron and push down on it to make sure that both ends are flat against the PCB. There we go, touching the solder, onwards and upwards. Now we're going to do the last component on this side, which is the IC. Again, I pick a pin that's closest to me. In this case, I'm choosing pin 8, and I put a little bit of solder on there. Now, there's lots of ways of doing this. This is how I do it, so I don't, think this is the gospel or anything. Oh, there goes the camera again. Sorry about that. So yeah, I'm trying to make I'll come back and I just touch it to make sure it's as flat as possible, right? Handling these components is a little more tricky. You want to be really careful you don't bend the leads, because once you bend the leads, it's kind of sad. It's very, very difficult to get them straight again, right? So just handle them really gently with the tweezers. Once you get them in place, try and push them around instead of picking them up. So essentially, at some point, if you look at the orientation, you need to make sure that these, again, are polarized components. So you need to make sure it's not in place yet. I'm just going to get my tweezers again and my soldering iron ready. So just make sure that you get it right in the correct place. So here I'm lifting it side on into place, but what I'm going to do eventually is turn around and again have my tweezers in my left hand and my soldering hand in my right hand. And I'm going to hold the component just using its body just above the pins, right? And this takes a little bit of shuffling. You can see it takes me a little bit of shuffling until I'm happy with the location of all the pins. And even then it's not quite straight. It doesn't really matter, but you'll see that once I'm happy with this, you'll see that quite clearly all the pins are lined up on the pads. So that's the important thing, no overlapping pins. And you can see, and when the next thing I do is a little bit naughty, is I push down on that with the soldering iron. I really should be pushing down on it with the tweezers to make sure there's no movement, make sure all the pins are on the. So just a little push with the soldering iron here. It's like, I think twice, maybe I should check. Before I solder it, I'm just going to push down on it. Yeah, it's okay. So make sure all the pins are flat on the pad. Once you solder more than one pin, it's very, very hard to do anything more. So you're going to make sure that the positioning is absolutely correct before you go on and do any more pins. Now in this case, I don't think I'll go back and do the pin that I used to tack it down. It's probably a good idea to do that. Now you see I'm holding the iron on the junction between the pin and the pad, just to make sure that I get solder on both the pad and the pin. All right, so that side of the chip's all done. We're going to turn it over. Sorry, that side of the PCB is all done. We're going to turn it over. Again, tape it down. Here I only use one bit of tape. That's a mistake. The thing jumps around all over the place. Definitely recommend 2 pieces of tape but when you're doing both sides. Then I'm going to grab the clip. I choose to orient the clip so that the battery insertion. Now I start tinning the wrong side here, and I stop because I'm going, no, I want to tin the side. Always tinning the side and on the side of the soldering iron. So I'm right-handed, I'm always tinning the right-handed pad. So remember the camera's turned around, so in this case, right is top. Okay, so now I'm going to get the battery clip. This one's a little tricky. It's just a matter of getting a lot of heat onto it. So you probably want to use a bigger soldering iron. So I'm heating the solder up, and I'm dropping it in, and I'm pushing down on it, and I'm heating it. Just waiting, patiently waiting, not being too rough with it. Just patiently waiting, pushing down until I get the clip hot enough that the solders. And what you'll see at one point, the solder just goes whoot and flows over the whole thing, and it's really well held in place. There you go. All right, I'm holding it down while it cools with my tweezers. All right, it's not quite in the right place, but actually this thing's pretty flexible, so you can actually just twist it like I do there. Hold it down with the tweezers. Oh, I twisted it while I was heating it, right? Almost always that's the case. You really want to move a component without heating it. So I've got it straight now. I'm going to get my solder, push down with the soldering iron, hold it down. Plenty of solder, plenty of heat. Make sure I heat the thing up nicely. All right, come back to the end you've tacked once that end's cool, once the other end's cooled down. Nice shiny joint on both ends. That's going to work really well. And here you have it. After my commentary, we have 2 flashing LEDs. I'm sure you'll have the same thing